Rewind-A-Dynamite from the most wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Waiting. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show, and if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody. It's John Pollock and Wei Ting live on a Wednesday night. And Wei, can you hear this? I'm at the Canada Life Center in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Yes. How big is, how many people were there and how big is the building usually?
There were over 4,000. We will get the exact number. It's a big building. I mean, this is where the Jets play. It's a much bigger arena. They had their last time there
7,000 something.
Yes, it's not like it was a drop. It was a notable drop from last time they were there, the first time in the market last March. I think it was a combination, though. It was not just that. I think it was multiple.
Can hold 16.
Yeah. So, I mean, this did not stand out to me as just a crowd that was completely silent, because you did get moments where they got into things. And in particular, they were there for Kenny Omega. And I mean, to their credit, like when we went to Toronto in March and they did the Rampage after Dynamite, Willow Nightingale and Sky Blue were once again thrown into, I thought, the toughest spot on the show. And for anyone that's, the shortcuts because of the hardcore stipulation, disagree to the nth degree, because they went out there and, man, for that Kyle O'Reilly Rocky Romero match, I cannot remember a televised AEW match that was that quiet. And they at least throw out whatever stipulation you need for that late in the show, because they did get the crowd at least active for that final match.
Yeah, Rampages usually have the benefit of being pre-taped, and they might do some audio sweetening before airing on Fridays. This was a show where they obviously had to go live, and they didn't really do much to change up the structure of these shows from like how the tapings would typically be. So you'd have this great peak of your big Kenny Omega Elite segment, and then we're just like basically being treated again to prelim matches. And how can you expect any crowd to be up for that? So a lot of credit for Willow and Sky to come through at the end to get the reaction that they got.
Why does it feel so much later doing this on a Wednesday than on a Monday when we do this at the exact same time? Because I feel like it's the middle of the night.
Well, we're not used to it, I suppose, for one thing. For another thing, I just think there's like a different pace to AEW shows where they're so densely packed and so full of activity that it kind of feels like you're actually watching 3 full hours of content. Whereas with Raw, like it's really often just like 2 hours of content, between all the long entrances and like the video packages and more commercial breaks without, picture in picture, for instance.
The Dynamite portion, like, sped by for me. I mean, I wasn't even monitoring the time, and suddenly it was 9:15. I could not believe we were already at 9:15. Like, I thought those 2 hours moved exceptionally quick, and then it grinded to a halt at Rampage. Because we really didn't start Rampage proper till, 10 after the hour or so? So you also know we're also going to get an overrun for Rampage. So it was more like 3 hours and 10 minutes that it worked out to be roughly. But I mean, we look at this, I mean, it sounds like they are doing this again, I believe, on the broadcast for May the 11th, which is a week from Saturday, with Collision and Rampage. So this is the latest week that they are doing these 3-hour blocks. And I still maintain this is, I don't think, just a coincidence. I think that they're very much just testing where things go, and that Rampage, I think if all things are equal, Rampage will be following an AEW program rather than being on its own. And I do not know if I have this in me to do this. And multiple 3-hour shows during a week are just, boy, that's a lot.
I'd be curious to know if like they'd structure these shows any differently if like they do commit to the full 3-hour block, because at the moment,
I don't know why you wouldn't. If it was this version on Wednesday, I don't know why you wouldn't just brand it Dynamite for 3 hours.
Yes. and actually peak the third hour with the big segment to close. I mean, unless it's maybe more strategic to, to divide ratings up, according to like the two strongest hours. I don't know.
Okay, well, we will get into AEW's return to Winnipeg, but let's go into some of the news items quickly before we move on. We start off. Paul Levesque and Cody Rhodes were on Twitter Spaces, I guess X Spaces, and the major thing of note was Paul Levesque noting that an announcement concerning WrestleMania 41 coming, quote, very, very soon. So that sounds like that announcement is imminent, and I would imagine that we are going to have a location pretty soon in terms of where they are going.
Very, very soon.
Well, the extra very makes me think that it's going to be very, very, very soon. And I think a lot of people are looking at Vegas as the front runner now ahead of Minneapolis. We will see. But those seem to be the two cities circulating the most. And if you throw out does Vegas just, again, throwing out like any site fees or, breaks that you're going to get from your governments, it just seems like Vegas is such an ideal tourist spot. And for WWE, there's all the synergy with UFC. It just seems to me like a city. It's Nick Khan's hometown. Like there's just so many benefits to it that, they've done one Mania in Vegas, and that was, a generation ago, and nothing like today's version of WrestleMania.
It's the city of money, in North America, maybe even the world, and as far as like publicity and media attention, I think like the optics of presenting a show in a city that's just kind of known for just big extravagance is exactly maybe more beneficial to TKO and WWE at the moment. I mean, those are at the very surface level, I think, some of the benefits, and who knows what other sort of financial benefits there are to running a show in Vegas versus Minnesota, which is maybe the city of Target. I'm sorry, people from Minnesota. I just, it's just, there's no comparison when you're talking about PR, what the better place would be for a show like WrestleMania.
After all these years, and Jesse Ventura discloses that he is in talks with WWE, and maybe that's gonna.
Do you think that'll equate to?
What do you mean you're gonna take it away from my city? I can't do it, Jesse Ventura.
Maybe they'll get backlash.
WrestleMania backlash.
Yeah.
Backlash. Yes, I will say that the idea of WrestleMania going to Las Vegas. Way and I have not made any decisions yet. I don't know if this year's WrestleMania. Oh,
you'd be swayed by
not by the location. Like most people, 99% of people. Okay, Vegas. That's why I would want to go there. You know what would be pulling me there? It's like, yes, long trip. A West Coast start time for WrestleMania at like 4 p.m. Very appealing. Very appealing. That show would be done by 8 p.m. tops.
You could still hit the tables afterwards.
No, I'd be doing a show with you, probably at a table. But anyway,
the podcast table is what I meant. Yeah.
So WrestleMania announcement is coming. Then we move on here. What did we have next here? The Vice has announced that they are going to be launching a 4-part series next month. Who Killed WCW? I think this is going to be like a murder mystery type of show. I think.
Yeah, will we get an answer by the end of the series?
Okay, guys, it was me. I did it. So yes, if you have seen the trailer, obviously this is being produced by $7 Productions, so that's going to, curry a lot of favor with the talking heads that you would assume for a series like this. Going based off the trailer, yes, you have Dwayne Johnson there, who I would imagine his name is attached to this, but I would imagine his perspective, yes, he was on the other side. I would wonder how closely he was following the business of WCW during this period. I'm sure he's maybe studied up on it, but you have Kevin Nash, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, Bret Hart and Bill Goldberg nailed down for this series. So Andrew Thompson will be on top of this. And yes, I don't know what to expect out of this. It's 4 parts. So you're talking, 3.5 hours of Who Killed WCW. So we will see. And it's also, of course, with Evan Husney and Jason Eisner of Dark Side of the Ring. And it will be in the Dark Side of the Ring time slot after next week's season finale. And then this comes back June 4th. Are you interested in this? You are the prime, both of us are prime people that they are aiming this at that lived through WCW and that you're interested to see yet another series on WCW?
Well, I'm actually curious to know if we are the intended market, because I almost feel like this is the type of story that is aimed at a broader audience that might not be as aware of the entire story as somebody like you and I, or people listening to this podcast, people that might not already be sick of this story, and people who might not already have a keen awareness of who actually killed WCW.
This is the network that greenlit a 1 hour documentary piece on Chris Colt. So, I mean, I think they feel like we've got the ardent wrestling fan, or at least it's carte blanche of what we will go with. But
because we already have that group, like the same group that would be interested in an hour-long documentary about the king of the the CZW Tournament of Death. Maybe they're trying to expand, and with the Rock attached to it, I'm sure he's just looking at a catalog of what might be an interesting wrestling story, and maybe there continues to always be interest in talking about the death of WCW.
This is also a non-WWE project. Like, as much as you want to call a Dwayne Johnson affiliated production a non-WWE project, but it's not like WWE is involved in this or selling this. And just based on the trailer, like, I'm curious, like, the footage that they have in there, because in the trailer, if you watch it, like, it's a lot of just like handheld footage and still shots. And I mean, you don't get, it'll be interesting. I can't imagine like what doing a 4-part series here is going to be in terms of what they have access to, but certainly Dwayne Johnson, you would think that this is a that they have access to whoever they want.
Well, I imagine officially, like, it's not a WWE project, but just simply given The Rock's attachment to it.
It's not like Tales from the Territories had, like, were necessarily working with, like, WWE cooperated in the sense of they did lend some of their talent to speak on those roundtable shows, but it wasn't a WWE show.
But The Rock wasn't a TKO board member at the time, and yes, it wasn't. This is not like, if it's already ready to air by June. I'm assuming WWE had very little involvement, perhaps, in the production of it. But can we be sure that they won't make some airtime to even mention it?
Well, we'll see if this gets promoted on WWE programming. That's the natural audience to promote this to. Yeah, so.
I think it's still an interesting enough topic, and the figures that are presumably involved in all of it are still, like, known enough that it like, if anything interesting is said, or like a big sort of buzzworthy quote from Bret Hart or Goldberg comes out there, or people are going to still make headlines over this show, perhaps even more, probably more so than Dark Side of the Ring even. So I'm curious to see what new information that they can uncover for a topic that I think we all have seen a lot about. But for a big audience that's out there, maybe they don't know a lot of the details.
Well, speaking of Dark Side of the Ring, their second to last episode this season aired on Tuesday night. Enter Sandman, Legacy of a Hardcore Icon, focusing on Jim Fullington. And this was a episode that, I mean, it incorporated his family quite a bit. They had his ex-wife Lori interviewed, as well as his children Tyler and Kelly. Tyler being his son that was used in the angle with Raven. So, I mean, he's in his 30s now. So he kind of looks back at this, and it was interesting to watch a lot of the footage of Tyler involved in this angle with Raven and calling his father a drunk and all of this stuff. And he was just like, yeah, this is pretty nuts that I was doing all of this. But I mean, I was just a kid at this point. I kind of just absorbed it. And at a certain point, Lori kind of just wanted him to be done with the wrestling stuff. So, like, in this episode, it would be interesting to know how lengthy of a process this interview was, because if you're just going in this linear fashion with this interview, like, you've got Sandman that's always going to amplify the character that you see that he plays, which is kind of this exaggerated version of himself, and maybe not even that exaggerated. So you're getting him, talking about an insane amount of drug use that this man participated in to the end that, I mean, Lori and Bill Alfonso both observing that it's amazing this man did not die. And he shared story, like, this was before wrestling, being into coke. And then that only escalated in wrestling, where apparently, like they stated, like he did not really get into painkiller use until later in his career when the injuries added up. And I mean, God, he's talking about a story where him and other guys, they had this like Rolodex of doctors in Philadelphia, and they would go from doctor to doctor and max out a prescription for oxys, and they'd get like the max amount from each doctor, which was like 90 oxy pills, and then they just pool them. And it was just like pulling over at a gas station and shooting up with Raven in a gas station, and any overdoses in the car afterward. I mean, just tons of drug stories that, he just kind of had this completely unbreakable sort of mentality about just trying anything and not being afraid of any drug to try or any stunt to do. We got maybe like the most hilarious testimonials from Rob Van Dam and Sabu, who stated they would never work with someone drunk, but Sandman earned that trust that they would work with him drunk. So, I mean, that to me is like the ultimate sign of, your fellow colleagues giving you the sign of approval. But of course, like all of this is sort of the veneer of Jim Fullington to the audience, where he so represents, I think, that spirit of ECW, the good and the bad of it. Like, here was this rebellious figure. He drank, he smoked, he did drugs, awful wrestler, but one of the all-time great entrances that to this day that we just saw a couple of weeks ago in Philadelphia. Still, when that Metallica song hits at the 2300 arena, the place goes wild for. But this is a guy that, I mean, he had, his wife ended up leaving him, and less so the painkiller use, but when he goes to WCW, he stated in the past, he was up to like making like 175 grand in ECW, I think at his highest point. And Bischoff signs him, and he gets a jump up to 250 a year going to WCW. So this guy was one of the bigger beneficiaries of that Monday Night War, of just getting great money for somebody that was, he was a strong act in ECW. And then when he goes to WCW, of course, you look at some of the bodies there, and he gets yoked on roids, and he bulks himself up, and they show the shots of him. It's like, I remember him looking like significantly bigger in WCW, but seeing some of these like still shots of him, it's like, my God, this man, because you're seeing like the side-by-side comparisons to his ECW time and then to WCW, because he gets signed in like late 98, and they don't use him until like the first or second quarter of 99. So for months, he has nothing to do but sit at home and probably get into the craziest shape of his life through a lot of shortcuts here. But he gets gigantically bulked up, and it's the steroids that he has very short temper, and Lori explains, like, he started getting physically abusive with her, but also verbally abusive. And she said, like, the verbal abuse was even worse than the physical abuse. And it's very sad hearing the children that you can see that both Tyler and Kelly, they have a love for their father, but are so disappointed in his actions here, of somebody that now at the age of 60, he's looking back at all of this and having, he calls himself like self-sabotaging, and he was awful to his wife, and he called her like an angel. She was a great wife, but he was awful to her during this period. And they definitely look at it more so on just like his steroid use and getting physically violent with her. And this kind of follows like several subjects this season of Chris Adams, Harley Race, with like domestic violence past. And I'm glad they're addressed here. But it certainly like paints a very ugly picture of like this outward appearance of the Sandman, but there's a toll that is taken and some very ugly truths that come with that. And then they focused a bit on this arrest he had in 2008, which was, I had to refresh myself on the details of it. He was at Captain Lou Albano's birthday party in 2008, which right there, I mean, sounds insane. And he gets hammered at this party for hours. He's being served alcohol. Lou Albano's niece told the bartender, please stop serving him. They ignored this, and it escalated where Sandman and this bartender end up getting into it, and they're throwing glasses at each other, and Sandman loses it. He is firing off all these glasses inside the restaurant. Police have to come. He's arrested. He's facing like 2 felonies and misdemeanors for this. And the video of this actually surfaced as well. There was video of him just out of his mind, drunk at this party. So that's briefly touched upon. And at the end, it's like he seems to have like a pretty good relationship now with his ex-wife and with his children. But they all kind of have this conclusion that they want to see him basically accept that he has a clean slate, and they want, and like, not in so many words, but saying they want to see him move on from this character. Like this, it almost sounds, like the athlete that is still living in high school or their glory days during that fame and fortune of their life. And here's a 60-year-old who needs a new hip. He needs surgery on both shoulders. So he's physically in a lot of pain. And, it's a very interesting look at the fame that it has on, especially some of these performers in ECW, where they were like the big, like here in, Philadelphia, they were major stars for a several year period, and they got onto pay-per-view, they got onto national television, and they're still living off of a lot of that fame for those that didn't go on for big runs in WWE or elsewhere. And the fact is that, for the star athlete that is now in their 50s or 60s, they can't get paid by an independent promoter to come play a football game and turn back the clock. But for a 60-year-old Sandman, he can get that payday to go do an independent show. And for one night, you're the Sandman of 1998 again to people. And it's very hard for a lot of these wrestlers to make that leap to kind of their post wrestling career. So it was definitely an interesting episode to look at. And it was hardly some like, glorification piece on the Sandman. Like they do address a lot of like the uglier side of him too. Like there's, he was a very, I wouldn't go so far as to say beloved figure, but I think a lot of people had a sentimental attachment to the Sandman of ECW. And I think that would exist today if you were at a show and Metallica hits and he comes out, but there's a huge price that comes with all of this. And he seemed, by the end of the interview, or at least the end of the episode, it's when you get some actual reflection from him and he's playing less of the on-air persona, and you feel like you are getting some of his more, regrets on stuff with his family and, the pain along the way that is now adding up when he's 60 that he had no concern about in his 30s and 40s.
Cool.
All right. And the last things here we will just quickly look at. We've got NXT number from Tuesday night. So this is the second week of Spring Breakin. Did not do well. They fell 15% in viewers to 564,000 viewers, down 30% in the 18 to 49 demo, down to a 0.14. So these were their lowest numbers since the 4th of July. And they were 10th on cable with the Knicks and 76ers game that did 3.2 million viewers. And they were also up against Game 5 of the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Boston Bruins that went into overtime, and the Toronto Maple Leafs staying alive before their ultimate end that comes on Thursday night in Toronto.
We'll see. Will you be watching?
I don't think I will be, because I'm not kidding. I didn't watch any of the game on Tuesday, and then NXT finished, and I saw the game was still on, and I turned it on, and I'm not kidding, within 3 minutes, they scored the winning goal. So I think I was bad luck for Boston.
Goodness, wow.
Yeah.
I'll keep me updated, John.
I won't, but it'll all be over Thursday night. Wrestling Dontaku is Friday and Saturday. So the key matches, first night, it's Nick Nemeth and Tanahashi for the IWGP Global Heavyweight title, and David Finlay against Yota Tsuji. And then late Friday night, early Saturday morning, it starts at 2 a.m. Eastern on New Japan World. Jon Moxley, Ren Narita for the IWGP Heavyweight title, as well as Shingo Takagi against Gabe Kidd for the Never Openweight title, and Goto and Yoshihashi against Chase Owens and Kenta for the IWGP tag titles. Karen Peterson and Bruce Lord will have you covered on the Post Wrestling Cafe on Saturday with the review of the highlights of both nights. So that'll be dropping Saturday on the Cafe for everyone. On Sunday, I'll be live with Eric Marcotte doing a UFC 301 review. So you can catch that on the YouTube channel. And I'll be doing a preview of UFC 301 with Jack Winon this Friday on the Cafe. And Jack Winon was at AEW tonight in Winnipeg.
Really?
Yes, he just happened to be there, and he went, and he did confirm to me it was very quiet inside the building.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope he had a good time otherwise.
I'll get some of his live thoughts when we chat later this week. So there you go. That is everything for you. And we've got a huge comeback. Not Christian Cage, not Kenny Omega. No, back into the fold, everybody. It's NORD, your favorite. Before the Colorado Avalanche, who eliminated those Winnipeg Jets, what were they before, Way?
What?
The Quebec NordVPN Deeks of the NHL. And Way, where do we go from here? Do you have a...
You know a lot of reasons by now why we love using NordVPN. It allows us access to geo-block services like AEW+. It helps us unlock cheaper prices for pay-per-views. But let's not forget a VPN's most important function, protecting your online privacy. If you do any sort of downloading of content, or if you regularly use Wi-Fi outside of your home, a trusted VPN helps mask your IP to protect your browsing from advertisers, hackers, and even your ISP. And while yes, the protection of a VPN may come with slower browsing speeds, NordVPN happens to be the fastest in the game. Named CNET's fastest VPN of 2024 through their extensive speed tests, Nord clocks an average download speed loss of just 11.1%, compared to Surfshark's 17% and ExpressVPN's 24.8%. Get the protection you need from the most reputable and fastest VPN on the market for just $3 a month. Sign up through nordvpn.com/postwrestling, where listeners can get 4 bonus months on top of all 2-year plans, plus a 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, nordvpn.com/postwrestling. Get your bonus months and let them know you found Nord through us. Sorry about that. A bit too trigger happy. I wasn't sure where your I guess throw was ending.
It wasn't going anywhere. But are you impressed? 1 week down, I remembered.
Yeah, did you actually?
I wrote it down, yes.
Oh, okay.
I did actually remember it this week.
We're trying a new thing where like I'm triggering like this overlay for the video to try to remind John.
Well, you do trigger me, so yes. So far, 1 week down.
We'll get it next time. Trust me, everybody.
Yeah. I'm the surf shark of this team. Way's the NordVPN.
Oh, very nice.
On to Dynamite we go, the Canada Life Center in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and we start off with Tony Khan in Jacksonville, joining us via satellite. He is not cleared to travel, and he is then getting his connection is cut off by the Young Bucks in the production truck, and they answer the question, why are we not being fired? That's because we have ironclad contracts with a founder's clause, and therefore we cannot be fired. This did not quite explain Jack Perry not being fired, but regardless, it is...
Oh, you mean for his role in the attack?
I mean, he did strike him in the stomach.
True, very true. Maybe because the EVPs, the Bucks have ironclad contracts, they can prevent a firing.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, use your imagination, fill in the blanks.
That's all we need. The only thing I would say about this was, I did feel they were in a bit of a corner here because I don't think, like, we went off the air last week where Tony Khan has been killed in the ring and we don't see him on Collision. And this is our first time seeing him on AEW itself. You couldn't exactly have Tony Khan like laid up in a hospital or something, because I just think it would be almost goofy at that point after we've seen him so prominently throughout the draft and everything last week. Mm-hmm. But this felt like a guy that it was like, hey everyone, it's Tony Khan here. I've got a neck brace. And is he just going to have his satellite cut out every week? And that's going to give the Bucks this reign of power.
I don't know if you'll hear from Tony Khan every single week.
Well, that's the point. Like, why won't we hear from him after this?
Because I guess it's kind of pointless from him, knowing that he'll have his feed hijacked anyway. I mean, I know what you're saying. Like, does it take away from the seriousness of the attack?
I'm just saying, like, we should be getting out of tonight, based on the angle we are going to get, is everyone's been taken out by the Elite, and therefore they are running this show without anyone challenging their power. And I just think you want to convey that Tony Khan, he's not just away, but he's also incapacitated to the point that he can't be running the show. From, like, the only thing preventing him from running this show is not so much the neck injury, it's his connection.
Right. Well, we don't exactly know what he's doing for the show, right?
They said on Collision he would be running Dynamite from Jacksonville remotely.
Okay, got it. Right. I honestly am not thinking that deep about this, John. And maybe I should be, but I mean, I just, to me at this point, like, this is not really based in reality anymore. Like, we are in some sort of like hyper, like almost campy sort of like wrestling, fiction where we know the deal here. We've seen this before in professional wrestling. It's the NWO taking over the show, and if they have to come up with some sort of silly excuse to get there, then that's the story that they're telling. That's all. Like, the way Tony Khan came across in this opening segment was almost so purposely dorky that it's, again, like, I don't think I'm at all supposed to feel sympathy for him. And in fact, I almost get the sense they're trying to purposely amplify how dorky he comes across so that maybe we can feel like the Elite are these cool NWO like heels. And maybe that's to the overall benefit of the entire show.
The clause is that if Tony Khan is unreachable and not at a show, then they are in charge. So they run a new show open just featuring the Elite, and that is how we go into this show. So as long as Tony Khan is unreachable, the Elite are in control of this company.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's easy enough to do every week, isn't it?
Well, they got to come up with reasons every week to make him unreachable.
So maybe Tony has to, he can only take control back if he physically shows up.
Maybe they start, they make a deal with Go Fight Live, and that's how Tony Khan, the people behind Go Fight Live are behind Tony Khan's internet connection to get to the building. And the stream constantly goes down.
I don't know.
No, they don't anymore. But they must have risen up like a phoenix somewhere else.
Maybe, yes.
Swerve and Prince Nana enter, and Swerve goes over his past week, repeats again that what the Elite did was a bitch move to Tony Khan, and eventually that will be handled. So it seems that they're parking that for now, but leaving it out there for the future. But right now he wants to know who his opponent at Double or Nothing will be. So the Young Bucks appear on the screen, and they state that his opponent at Double or Nothing is going to be a very famous Canadian wrestler, a former champion, and someone who we haven't seen for quite some time. And he's ready to come out. And with that, Christian Cage makes his return, coming out, and is accompanied by Nick Wayne, Mother Wayne, and Killswitch. There were some scattered chants here for Christian, and Swerve and him end up going at it here when Swerve is attacking all of them, pulls up when he faces Shayna, and then there's a Killswitch hit on top of the belt by Christian, and a Wayne's World delivered to Prince Nana. So Cage says he never forgets that Swerve broke into Nick Wayne's gym and bloodied him last year. Then they teamed it all in. Swerve lost. You embarrassed me, and I'm going to make you a footnote in AEW history. And makes the comment that Swerve shared last week about his daughter not knowing him, and when Cage is done with him, she won't want to know you, but she's going to have a father that she can be proud of for the rest of her life. And then Cage insults the Winnipeg Jets, who had just been beaten by Colorado the night before in this building, and said that he's going to walk into Swerve's house and beat him just like the Avalanche did to the Jets. And then Killswitch tears out a piece of Swerve's hair as the crowd starts chanting, "Eat it." And when he didn't eat this piece of hair, this crowd was like, okay, we'll show you for the next hour and a half.
I guess there has been precedent set for hair eating in professional wrestling over the past month.
That is true, yes. So yeah, they're going with Swerve and Christian Cage at Double or Nothing.
Yeah. Not a match I expected. I mean, on paper, not really the type of pay-per-view level like match I think you'd expect from Swerve. Like Claudio versus Swerve in ring feels a bit more attractive to me than even this. But Christian is the bigger on-screen character, and after hearing like the reasons for this feud in this segment, I mean, I'm in. You know, they came in with like really good, I think, logic for why the match might be happening, making Swerve pay for the Nick Wayne attack, for costing Christian the All-In match. The big point of contention, of course, would be the rankings, of which I don't think Christian, I don't even know where he is, but I can accept that with the Elite in charge. Basically, those get thrown out the window, and they will be favoring, you know, fellow heels, leapfrogging the rankings to get up here.
It's like eliminating Tony Khan eliminates so many of these problems.
Exactly.
Attached to the show.
Yeah.
The rankings are gone because Tony Khan's gone, and we can now just book whatever we want. It remains to be seen what the full fleshed out card is, but I guess like unlike Dynasty, it's not like we have some crazy dream match for Will Ospreay. I mean, he's got Roderick Strong. You've got this, which like it's a good match, but is this going to be in the position that it has to carry the pay-per-view and be your big drawing match? I mean, like this is, to me, of the opponents that you would have had available, I would put like a Hangman or a Jack Perry ahead of a Christian Cage, but it seems like those are probably, like with Jack Perry, probably a longer term play for them. The key is going to be probably the Elites match and what they're doing at the pay-per-view, but we know Kenny won't be on that show. We know that MJF will probably not be on that show, and it doesn't appear Adam Cole is ready to come back. Like it doesn't. We'll see what the lineup is.
This is the type of match that I question if it'll be the main event of this pay-per-view. Certainly in terms of billing, I don't think it will be. I think they will need something stronger than Christian versus Swerve in order to attract people to buy the show. So you know, is this the best spot for Swerve, you know, in his first actual pay-per-view as champion? You can question it, but we also haven't seen the feud unfold. I mean, they could build this thing hot enough to the point where we feel like it's actually a very
the promos are going to be great.
Pay-per-view.
I don't doubt we're going to get a great, you know, couple of weeks to get to this pay-per-view. My question is, if they lean all in on this, the Bucks have taken over, like to the extent, like do the Bucks handle like the press conference at Double or Nothing?
Yeah, go all the way. Absolutely. They should handle the press conference, like the pre-phone call, the media calls, do all the interviews. Tony Khan should just be, you know, his connection should cut out everywhere, you know. So I think Swerve is clearly building to a bigger feud with the Elite, and perhaps you're seeing some seeds being sown already for Blood and Guts or Anarchy in the arena. And yeah, the face turn, how do you feel 2 weeks in for Swerve? Or several weeks in, officially, but officially 2 weeks in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I thought that Collision on Saturday, like it really was a hard switch to like babyface, where he's really endearing himself to the audience. I think you want to maintain certain elements of the Swerve character that led up to all of this. But I think it's still early. Like I don't think you have like a solid evaluation of him this quick into it.
Yeah, I at some point during this segment, I mean, I too had a little bit of concern that he was maybe straying a little too far from like what got him to this position in the first place, and that was like retaining at least a bit of that the child kidnapper, you know, that made us all love him so much. But the point is, you know, he needs to hold on to some of that like sadistic sort of edge, you know, when he's fighting for our side now. And I think the segment that we would see with him later on hints at that coming out, perhaps even as soon as next week.
Adam Copeland and the Copeland features Buddy Matthews getting the TNT title shot in Winnipeg. And early on, both are just trying to catch the other one. And Copeland hits a tope suicida, and he's grabbing his shoulder and starts selling it. And that would be Matthews' target throughout the match. And they are battling on the turnbuckle. Both land on the floor. They beat the count. And then they collide with a mid-ring crossbody. And Matthews is immediately grabbing his midsection, and he's in the corner. And he's like spitting up blood, and Aubrey Edwards is coming to check on him. There's a physician that comes in, and Matthews then waves him off. And Copeland just goes to the sternum, and he's constantly attacking the midsection of Buddy Matthews throughout this. And at one point, he's delivering the punches in the corner, and Matthews grabs Copeland by the arm, and he's ramming the shoulder into the turnbuckle. So you have one guy with like the weakened midsection, and then Copeland with this bad shoulder. There's a sunset bomb that gets blocked by Copeland. He hits an impaler DDT off the second turnbuckle. And I mean, the downside was this was a long match to open, and this crowd, it took a long time before they got into some of the key stuff here. Mainly Copeland teasing the spear that they reacted to. And he goes for the spear, but is stopped by a pair of strikes. And Matthews hits the jackhammer, then goes to a crossface. Angle gets out of that, Copeland gets out of that before he hits an angle slam. Matthews then sidesteps a second attempt at a spear, and Matthews puts him up and hits a GTS. So if you're keeping track at home, that's a jackhammer and a GTS plus an angle slam in this match. Copeland sidesteps a stomp and then spears him for the win in 21 minutes and 2 seconds.
21 minutes for TV is a pretty lengthy match, you know. I would say this was good overall. I was surprised by how much they packed into it in terms of, I guess, like, you know, storyline threads. You know, what I loved was how the announcers were able to point out that Copeland, throughout interviews over the past week, has talked about introducing new moves for every single one of these matches that he's been doing in AEW, and they suggested that the tope suicida might have been one of the new moves, and that of course led to the shoulder injury that they continue to work on throughout the storyline. So I love that they managed to introduce that. The mouth blood for Buddy Matthews coming off of the double crossbody, all to head to commercial, was something I wouldn't necessarily have expected, especially when it's coming from the heel bleeding out of the mouth. But they needed enough material to grab you for 3 different segments here. I would suggest that maybe it's slightly overstated welcome, just because this is supposed to be the first of 3 people for Adam Copeland to face, and for like a first chapter, there really isn't that much interest in the outcome of this to last that long. But as far as in-ring content goes, like, Buddy Matthews is one of those like incredibly dependable guys that where every match is going to be good, even though you probably know the outcome for 99% of his matches, and he's probably going to lose them. So but it was a good match, just to me a little bit long.
It was long, and it definitely did lack heat for a decent portion of it. But I like the character they're doing with Adam Copeland is that the House of Black is like pushing him over the edge, and he's gonna start to crack. And I kind of liked all the midsection work. It's like, here this guy was getting ruthless. He had no sympathy for this guy, and it sets you up for the spear that was going to have that much more impact at the end of things. The post-match sees Copeland continue to attack him and continue this kind of snapping that he's going through. And he goes for the concerto. When the lights go out, Malachi appears and is telling Copeland to do it, with the idea that he's going to fall under their spell. And Matthews dares him to do it too. But then the lights go out, Matthews and Black disappear. And the next one up is Brody King, that they announced for next week's Dynamite, which is in Edmonton.
So I kind of feel like these sort of like will he turn to the dark side types of stories at this point are very cliche and tired in pro wrestling.
Well, he took the mist way. He took that dreaded black mist.
Was that all what initiated all of this?
I mean, that's what started it for Julia Hart.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I know what they're trying to do here, but like, it's hard for me to buy, especially when like what we're trying to be educated here is like, will Adam Copeland deliver a concerto to Buddy Matthews? And if he does, he turns to the dark side.
Which he has done already.
We see this guy do this every month.
Did it to Nick Wayne.
Yeah, like he does it all the time. So I don't like, this is the guy responsible for putting the C in TLC. You know, it's like a chair shot hardly, I think, you know, is such a, I don't know, ludicrous act that I feel he'd be selling out his morality for. So maybe it needs to be something else. Like maybe he needs to go through like a barbed wire board on a table off the apron or something.
Samoa Joe returned after this is his first match since losing the title against Isiah Kassidy. I thought was a really entertaining 3.5 minutes. Kassidy puts on Joe's towel, so Joe goes after him and he gets gouged in the eye by Kassidy and presses him up in the air and attacks Kassidy with strikes into the corner. Kassidy goes for a springboard and snaps the neck on the top rope. And then Kassidy goes for the tope con hero, and Joe does the walk-off as this guy just crashes on the floor. Crowd loved this spot. And we see a monkey flip countered into the muscle buster as Joe wins in 3 minutes and 29 seconds. I just could not imagine, like, to deliver a tope con hero knowing the guy isn't going to catch you. I mean, that takes an inordinate amount of just perseverance to push through and deliver that move.
Kassidy did a great job of making Joe look great. You know, I mean, not to say like, you know, anybody kind of deserves anything extra, but I also wonder what sort of like thank you Joe might give to any of these guys for, first of all, taking the walk-off spot, which always makes, you know, has to make the other person look stupid, but especially with Kassidy, like taking a huge bump here, you know, front flip, no safety net, just a hard crash to the mat. So Kassidy, I thought, did a great job of making Joe look just like completely devastating. By this point, Joe is a total babyface.
Oh, this crowd loved him.
Yeah. I would have liked to have heard Joe cut a bit of a promo after this, just to kind of give us a bit of a sense of like what his next program might be, and also just what his mindset is after losing the championship, which should be a significant event for any athlete.
Sky Blue calls Willow Nightingale a fraud. I pinned you in our last match, and brings up beating Willow and Chris Statlander the last time they were in Canada in a street fight, which was the Toronto match, and she wants a TBS title match tonight. Then out comes Orange Cassidy. They show highlights of the parking lot fight, and he says he thought that Trent and Chuck would get all of this out of their system and be back together, but that's never going to happen. The crowd's sad about this news, that the best friends will never team again. But there's worse news. He's been told that Chuck Taylor will never wrestle again because of what Trent did to him in the parking lot fight with the wrench to the ankle. So now he's all alone, and Trent comes out stating, "You're making the end of Taylor's career about yourself. You're too selfish." And he blames Kassidy for his career ending, and security is holding them back. Chris Statlander is out as well. And then Don Callis walks out and whispers something into Cassidy's ear, and it's Don Callis leaving with Orange Cassidy. And despite an advertised match with Konosuke Takeshita, this would be the last that we would see of Winnipeg's own Don Callis on the show.
Who was Takeshita supposed to face? Lloyd
London?
London?
London Lightning, yes.
London Lightning, okay. You know,
And the match got struck.
Maybe that was a swing vote. Maybe that's a long-term build. We have to wait till we come back to Winnipeg for. Yeah, they teased Callis, you know, inserting himself into this feud on Saturday, and I thought it would be as simple as just like Callis sending an invite to Trent to join the family, but it looks like they're playing it in a bit more of an interesting way, teasing first that Orange might be joining the Callis family. So, I mean, in the end, it's still very likely it's Trent joining, but it could be Statlander too. Like, she continues to be involved and be an X factor in all of this.
Renee is with the Young Bucks, and they hand the mic over to Jack Perry. All he wants is what.
By the way, what do you think Chuck Taylor's like legitimate status is?
I mean, he had been out for so long, and then comes back
and did that match.
Yeah, I thought they had a hell of a parking lot match on Rampage. Like, really, like they have made those parking lot matches like to me like a kind of special stipulation match, especially with these guys involved in them, going back to the Santana Ortiz match, that I thought they did a really great job. But I'm certain that there's probably more to it to this with Chuck Taylor and what exactly.
Could he actually be injured if he had that sort of match?
I mean, it could have been the case of just, you know, he's off for a while after this, or I don't know, but it's not like they, you know, cut corners in that parking lot match. Like, they went all out in this match.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Jack Perry explains he always did what was best for AEW, and that's why he did what he did. Tony made him the scapegoat, and we all have to sacrifice. We are entering a new era, which is the last two words I want to hear on AEW programming. A new era under the Elite.
The Matthew and Nicholas
and Jack and Kazuchika era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jericho and Shibata for the FTW title.
By the way, I really like Perry's, new, I guess, attitude in this role so far. He really does feel like he has a different aura around him. He's got like a really cool laid back demeanor, which he almost certainly gets from his dad, which has really like perfectly come out for this type of character. So he's doing really well.
It's Jericho and Shibata for the FTW title. Ted Irvin is in the front row, and Jericho comes out, and he's just doing the over-the-top, smug, babyface presentation. He's in trunks for this match, and he's just insincerely waving to the crowd like this is looked like a babyface out of like 1983 here coming out. Taz is rooting for Shibata, and we just get they note that in Shibata's entire career, he has never been involved in a no disqualification match. So this is a first for Shibata, and what a first it was. So we get, the requisite trash can lid, and then Jericho brings out the bag, and you think it's thumbtacks, but it's like there is not a prayer that these two are doing thumbtacks. And he reveals a bag of hockey pucks, and the hockey pucks are placed all over the mat. And we see Shibata deliver an STO to Jericho onto the pucks. And then they spend the entire picture-in-picture break chopping one another. And their chests were so red after this match. Or after this spot, I should say. And Shibata goes for the running drop kick in the corner. But Jericho whips a puck at him, applying the walls of Jericho. Shibata breaks free. He puts the figure 4 on. And then in a counter I've never seen before, Jericho broke the figure 4 by whipping a puck at Shibata's face. And then I had to think to myself, what would I be more willing to do? The Tope Con Hero with the walk-off, or knowing that this man is going to throw a puck into my face and I'm not going to be able to block it? And I really don't know what the answer would be there. I don't think I could do the puck.
You ever play hockey?
Like I did. And dude, if you've never been hit by a puck, things are hard, and they don't make a sound either, so they're not great wrestling weapons.
Oh God, no! But
it just is heavy and it hurts.
But every person in this arena in Winnipeg knew what that felt like, because I'm assuming everybody has at least held a hockey puck and knew the weight attached to a hockey puck. It's just a giant, like, thick piece of rubber, and I think most of us could understand that on like your face probably doesn't feel too good, and this might have actually drawn blood, because afterwards we see Shibata with like a busted up nose.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's taken as like comedy, but it's like we're throwing like a really like solid object,
like Jericho's quote about the Floyd the Plant. Like it might have gotten maybe some sort of like, I don't know, goofy reaction to start, but it was used as like a legitimate weapon.
Oh, it was, and we are talking about Shibata here too. Like, you're just throwing like a blunt object at his face.
Well, at one point, like, I mean, I guess like there's no real risk of brain trauma, I suppose. Maybe from that distance, at least I hope. But at one point, he does take like a trash can lid to the head unprotected. And like, even though it's a trash can lid and not a steel chair or anything, like part of me just definitely still winced.
So this, I mean, to the Mitch the Plant comparison, yes. Taz says, "What the puck?"
If you're gonna ever say it, this would have been the match, yeah.
So the trash can gets placed on top of Shibata, and Jericho strikes it with the kendo stick when Shibata gets to one knee, wearing the trash can. And he gets up, and he slowly corners Jericho against the turnbuckle. And, I mean, the crowd, like, loved this spot. And then he just starts ramming himself with the trash can into Jericho's head.
The only way I can accept Shibata headbutts is if he has a trash can on his head.
Yes, I think like this is probably what New Japan wanted him protected in at all cost. So Jericho hits a baseball slide to the trash can, and Shibata hands him a kendo stick. They sit cross-legged and strike each other with kendo sticks. And then a table gets set up in the corner. Shibata is caught with the code breaker, stops a Judas effect, and then swings Jericho into a chop. When Big Bill appears, boots Shibata, chokeslams him through the table, and Jericho climbs on top in 15:26. And Jericho nods in approval to Big Bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was a match that definitely overseeded my expectations. I didn't know how a Katsuyori Shibata weapons match would look like, and I thought his style was used very effectively for this sort of rule set. You know, the character is essentially all about like physicality and hitting hard and tests of will, and I thought all of those things were like well employed here with the various gimmicks that you have. Again, the pucks could have been really goofy, but I thought they created for some of the stronger, like more serious reactions from this crowd in the way that they were used, and it was
outside of Kenny Omega, like I thought this was like the most engaged the crowd got at certain spots. But I will also temper that where, like for his hometown, it's not like Jericho was this overwhelming superstar reaction coming out. You know, it was a good reaction, and in comparison to most everyone else on the card, it was on the higher end, but not like some deafening response either.
Yeah, which at this point like should be a big heel response. I think maybe at least part of it might be some sort of transitional confusion from the crowd where I mean Jericho is playing like an over the top baby face and you're supposed to boo him, but maybe you just kind of chalk it up to like the sound of the crowd overall.
Another note is that Jericho now has his name on the title, which infuriated Taz, which is kind of a funny story because when they created the FTW title, like Taz, when designing the title, it was just designed for Taz. So he literally had his name engraved on the title. And then they did the switch where Sabu won the title. And then so Sabu literally just put tape over top of the title and wrote Sabu on it during his time with the title. So we go to the back. Renee gets the response from Willow Nightingale, who's with Statlander and Stokely. First of all, Statlander apologizes for last week. She just wanted to diffuse the situation when Monet interrupted Willow Nightingale, and Monet was not on the show tonight. But
She's
continuing,
not coming to Winnipeg, are you kidding me?
No, we were not going all the way there. Nor was Will Ospreay, by the way.
Well, I guess he deserves a week off.
Willow accepts the challenge from Sky Blue. I'm going to maim and massacre you in Winnipeg. And then Renee is given a text that Chris and Stokely are banned from ringside. And if they appear, Willow is stripped of the title. And we get the Manitoba Massacre in the main event of Rampage.
Yeah, boy, did we. I don't know about you, but like part of me feels like it's kind of actually refreshing to have heel general managers again. Like I feel like we've been so long without them, and especially in AEW where they've never been used. Like I certainly didn't mind any of this like heel GM like shenanigans. In fact, like kind of found it novel.
If it is not like they overdid it on this show to where it was groaning. If anything, it's like the idea of there will be no interference in this match is don't think people are going to be complaining about that, especially when we were coming off this like 15-minute match that just ended with a run-in with Big Bill as well. So, I mean, you are kind of the underlying current here is that the Elite are responsible for Tony Khan being gone. And with that, you're going to see other changes as well that I think some of the audience are going to be very welcoming.
Sounds like they're making the show just better, throwing out the rankings, making sure people don't get involved in matches.
I mean, what are they going to do next week? No more 3-hour blocks. We are a 2-hour show, max.
Yeah.
Claudio Castagnoli and Brian Cage in an unfortunate spot here on the show where this was just it was a match and another fine match, but not one the crowd was overly intrigued by. Claudio did a promo after his loss to Swerve on Saturday. He isn't the wrestler he wants to be, but the wrestler he has to be. And they did a lot of cool stuff in this match, including a deadlift vertical by Brian Cage. And boy, Taz has never seen something so impressive. He was blown away by this deadlift vertical and just is like remarking that 99% of the people here in this crowd don't know how hard that is to do. And Excalibur's like, I think you're right, because I'm pretty sure 100% of the people in this crowd have never tried that, Taz. And then this is clearly during picture-in-picture. So Taz put out a tweet about like the status of he needs like both his knees replaced and both his shoulders replaced. So man, the Excalibur and Shivani just like are on him about his knees, his shoulders. They're like, don't worry, buddy. We'll wheel you out to the broadcast desk if we have to. And Jared just like bringing up all his health ailments. Claudio responds with a bunch of super kicks and then hits the Swiss 1-9. hits a discus lariat. The neutralizer gets countered, but then a pop-up uppercut, giant swing, which does get a big pop into the sharpshooter, and he pulls Cage to the center for the submission with the sharpshooter. So the Swiss Claudio winning with the Canadian finishing hold in Winnipeg.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Good match. Unfortunately, my energy was also kind of low for this one. So, I mean, on paper, like this should be a match that I'd be absolutely like in love with. You know, these are two guys of a similar mold here, just ultra athletic, big muscular guys who are freakishly strong. But there just really wasn't any interest or I think reason for me to watch beyond just an athletic display, which it was, but not necessarily enough this deep into the show.
Yeah, I mean, we did have the thread here of, I mean, if anything, a reminder that Brian Cage is aligned with Prince Nana, and therefore coming off the Swerve loss, like there is a connection here of Claudio after the loss to Swerve, and he beats Brian Cage here. Renee interviews Rocky Romero. He's not siding with Kassidy or Trent. He's going on his own, and he's going to become a champion, and he issues a challenge to Kyle O'Reilly for tonight on Rampage. Mariah May with Toni Storm and Luther against Serena Deeb. Early on, Deeb puts her in the Paradise Lock, and then May gets into control. And during the picture-in-picture, Taz is really annoyed with this fan that is screaming Toni Storm's name behind him. And he remarks about this guy. And then Excalibur moments later says, "You're right. This guy is really annoying. That's yelling Toni Storm's name." So this is what you're missing on the picture-in-picture commentary. It is like clockwork. The second they are off of TBS, they are just in a completely different zone.
Well, you got to take your mental break somehow.
So this turned into a very entertaining match. May blocked the Serenity Lock and hit a missile dropkick off the top, hit the hip attack, and then a running knee strike, which Excalibur yells, "Check your calendar because it's going to be May." Like, there are only so many times in your life on the very first month of the calendar that you're going to get to use a line like that. So Excalibur used it here. We got multiple rotations by Deeb until getting the backslide, and then May hits a big backdrop suplex. Handstand in the corner is caught by Deeb, who grabs the leg and leaps off into the half crab, pulls her to the center, away from the rope, and Toni Storm grabs the towel and throws in the towel away. How did this rank on the scale of Kofi Kingston to Helen Hart?
Helen Hart. Well, it was so quick, honestly. Like there wasn't really much tension teased, and she actually went through with the towel throwing. So I don't even know if this necessarily qualifies.
Yes. So the idea is here that Toni Storm is costing Mariah May getting any closer to the title after she was making her way up in the rankings. But this sets up Toni Storm and Serena Deeb for Double or Nothing, which they announced.
Yeah, will be interesting. Will be interesting to see how Mina Shirakawa might play into things here. If this is the breakup of Toni Storm and Mariah May. I thought Deeb was so much fun to watch here. You know, she plays the technical gimmick really well. She offers a style that's certainly very unique to the division, if not the entire show. And I thought this match was actually a really good display of that style, though I don't know if this was the best crowd to maybe have a Serena Deeb match in front of, because
this wasn't the best crowd for anyone to have a match in front of.
Yeah, unfortunately. So I hope that they can do enough for her as far as like build and character and story to make her feel like she's an actual worthwhile challenger, and not just, you know, another sort of like side story en route to Mariah May versus Toni Storm.
Renee is with Adam Copeland, and Renee gets very serious. "Adam, are you doing okay?" And I transcribed his response. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm okay. And Kyle O'Reilly enters, and Kyle's a big fan of Adam Copeland and says, "You know, with this House of Black stuff, if you need any backup, I'll be there for you." And Copeland responds, "Hey, eyes up here." I was like, "What?" Oh, he was looking at his title belt. It's like, is he taking a look at like I don't know, his brand new shirt maybe? So I'm thinking that this is going to escalate very quickly because they're in Vancouver next weekend for Collision, and I could see this being Kyle's big Vancouver homecoming match.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Makes as much sense as anyone.
I mean, I can see it too. Part of me would feel a little bit disappointed at how rushed that would be, though, because I think there's so much more potential for a bigger story with these two. But this is just how,
Dude, we got 10 days.
Well, it's a bit better than this Willow versus Sky match, where they look at what they did in their match, and they got like an hour's worth of build, right? I just think like this interaction alone with Kyle and O'Reilly and Adam Copeland to me was kind of promising. I love the way that they had Kyle come in and offer help, but really wanting to get closer to the TNT Championship, and I thought like this was maybe the most interesting I've seen Kyle O'Reilly since his comeback, because, he's come back, he's cut like these babyface promos, and they're definitely his weakest point. And I think at least a part of that is because he has like kind of disturbing, like distracting crazy eyes. But in this segment, it seemed like they were using that crazy eyes, like dead stare, to their advantage. And it just made me like sort of envision this like really strong Bob Backlund style of like obsessive, crazy heel character for Kyle O'Reilly in the future, which I would like. All I'm saying is there's so much more substance here for this potential feud for Kyle going after the TNT Championship, and I hope that's not just immediately extinguished with like a one-off, hometown match. Maybe that would be the springboard, but I would love to see these two get a longer program.
I like the thread of Kyle O'Reilly after the Roderick Strong setup of him earning title shots by simply walking into a scene and staring at the person's title and the champion noticing it.
Forget the rankings, really. That's just
he's learned the cheat code.
That's it.
And other than Mark Hominick walking in with like a Tim Hortons, you could not have a more Canadian scene than that backstage.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, with Renee there as well. Absolutely.
I mean, Renee could have just responded to the idea of this match. Oh yeah,
for sure.
For sure. We go to Justin Roberts, non-Canadian, who introduces Kenny Omega, the man who achieved the illustrious 7-star rating, which was actually not just there for like giggles and stuff. There was actually a purpose to that line being in there because it would be the focus later here. Mm-hmm. And as Kenny Omega walks out, Tony Schiavone remarks, "I have never seen him have a bad match." And Kenny comes out and he walks into the ring and he's looking very serious. And he says, I'm not good at this stuff. And speaking about my health. And he goes over his diverticulitis diagnosis and being in the hospital for 10 days and being told he was 24 hours away from dying, and said that he was told about a procedure that he could have, and it would require having a colonoscopy bag that he might have for a month, 6 months, or even the rest of his life. And if he doesn't have this procedure, he would have a ticking time bomb for the rest of his life inside of him, and any blunt force trauma to the stomach could kill him. And in order to get through this, he had to stop watching wrestling because his hands would shake when he would watch. And for the first time in his career, he was scared, and he felt pathetic, and he felt like a coward. And he thought that this whole thing tonight was going to be having to retire. But then he got on Triller TV and he realized he had a replay of Dynasty and he had an extra credit. And so he watched Dynasty and he watched Swerve win the title and he watched Danielson and Ospreay have one of the greatest matches he has ever seen, which my hope is that was designed to be a plant of one of the greatest matches, but not the best.
Well, he's the only person to achieve, one of two people to achieve a 7-star match, and the match he watched on Dynasty did not.
So he heard the crowd cheer for him, and yes, I was scared. We're all scared of something, but I found that I was shaking because I was going through withdrawal, and being the best is what fueled me, and I thought that everyone had forgotten me. He says he promises this is not over until I exhaust every option, even if there is a 1% chance of coming back. Bag or no bag. It's like that has definitely never been something a wrestler has described in terms of an obstacle to overcome, to
that
return
really
to the ring.
Would be next level. If Kenny Omega could wrestle with a colonoscopy bag. I mean, I'm sure it'll be done at some point. Yeah.
He says he is not done yet. He made a mission statement to change the world. And speaking of colonoscopy bags, let's talk about two other shit bags while we're at it. Matthew and Nicholas,
Great
maybe the
segue.
transition of the year, and says that I too am an EVP and I cannot be fired from that position. Therefore, I have power. And as he's about to lay this out, Okada's music hits. And this crowd is very excited. And that's saying a lot for this crowd that took a lot to be pleased. It required, by some people's definition, the greatest match of all time to be rekindled here in the middle of the ring. As Excalibur points out, this is the other half of that 7-star match. And they go face to face, and it's quite the moment here with these two. And Omega welcomes him in Japanese and then says, why don't you give me a couple of months and then we settle it in an AEW ring. And Okada says, I'm sorry, but I'm the best bout machine now. And then Jack Perry jumps Kenny Omega from behind, and this crowd is livid. Perry takes out security with chair shots, and then Omega is trying to fight back, and he manages a snapdragon onto Jack Perry, but then he grabs his midsection, tears open his shirt, signals for the V trigger, but he is tripped by Okada as Perry hits him in the midsection with a chair. And the crowd boos this so heavily. The Bucks run down to stop Jack Perry, and Omega is struggling and trying to pull himself up by the Bucks, and they take him by the wrist and hit the perfectly named EVP trigger to Kenny himself. More boos, and then FTR run down to chase off the Elite as Dynamite ends. And you do have the explanation that Swerve, who is somewhat attached now to this by commenting on it, was taken out earlier in the attack by Cage and company. And then this would bleed into Rampage, and we'll talk about the follow-up to this. I thought this angle was great. I thought it was really, really great. I thought that last week, the Tony Khan thing to me was a means to an end to get to this purpose of the Elite that now have control. And this felt like something that, barring any significant issues that Kenny cannot come back from, my God, you have just set the table for so much stuff here. And I thought this angle was great. I thought Kenny was awesome in it as well. I thought Okada was great. Jack Perry is what was a big focus of this as well. I just thought this was a really well done angle.
Yeah, I thought it was an excellent segment. I thought this was probably Kenny's like most substantial and maybe best babyface promo I've heard from him. He came across like, you know, an incredibly heartfelt, authentic, and at times like very emotional babyface. And you know, you never hear, I think, people talk so much about his promo abilities, and I don't think he's ever recognized as like, you know, great, but
when he's doing the silly voice, I think that's what turns a lot of people off, when he's not taking it seriously. But when he is on, and I have experienced this of just seeing this guy in like media outlets and such, like he's excellent in those roles. And this was something very real to him that he had to sink his teeth into, and didn't have to be getting in like the witty lines or jokes that were not really connecting. Like this was just a serious, like sincere message that he had with an audience that was very like the audience was here for Kenny Omega. He was clearly the biggest star on the show.
He's shown that he's very capable of delivering a serious babyface promo like this, and to get you to, you know, feel sympathy for him, to get you to want to see him come back, to want you to just basically cheer for him. And for a guy who's already that good of a wrestler to be able to like say that you could cut this level of promo, I mean, just, you know, makes him that much more of a complete package. So they did such a great job here of setting up that one punch to the gut and he's dead type of like Achilles heel injury that he might have for a long time, if not forever.
And then the chair, like I thought just like they got so much out of that. To the point that like I was good with this.
Me too.
As soon as they got to the back, I mean, both of us had to have been flashing back to
my favorite parts of all of this was like when Kenny was trying to fight back and you had the announcers like concerned that, Kenny, don't take things too far. Like, you know, you're like one punch to the gut and you're dead. So like even the threat of his stomach being touched, I thought was like big enough that I don't even know if you needed the actual chair to the gut. Maybe they did because, you know, you probably had to take Kenny out for that much longer. The gurney push, I almost felt like was bordering on a little bit too much, but it was certainly no semi truck into a
Which,
into an
believe me,
ambulance.
that was going through my head.
Me
I was
too.
like,
Yeah.
because I didn't think they went to like the extreme with like the tipping in the back, but Omega's taken out onto the stretcher and they're brought to the back, and the Elite are attacking FTR by the ambulance, and then everyone's taken out. So they surround the gurney with Omega, and Matt says he loves them to death, but it's just business, and tips him over. And that was the end. So the idea here is that there are 4 people with power in this company. The overarching force is Tony Khan, who's been taken out, and the only person who can subvert the Bucks has now been taken out in Kenny Omega. So I really thought this was a great angle to set up what seems to be the next several months of AEW programming, that the Bucks are now on this power trip and there is nobody to thwart them.
Yeah. I thought they did a great job of, just first of all building our anticipation for an eventual Kenny Omega return here. They essentially promised us Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada. Now, a segment like this is going to have a lot of people maybe assuming that Kenny has been kind of letting on his recovery to be a lot further than it might be. And he essentially promised that, Okada Omega is a few months away, but it could also just be like his sort of hopeful, motivator to try to get healthier. We don't know. Nonetheless, like there's already setting in motion Okada versus Omega, presumably, within the year if Kenny is healthy enough. They also just continue to do a great job of making this new Elite feel like such an overwhelmingly dominant force across this entire show, and it's giving the show a sense of purpose and direction that I feel was kind of missing before. So they continue to just do a great job with all 4 of those guys.
And yeah, so there you go. That was the show, and they ended on a high note. I mean, that's what you want to end the show on, right? We had another hour to go. And as we go, Matt Menard just reflects, we have children crying back here as he joins Excalibur and Shivani on commentary. And this did air on TSN2 as well, the 3rd hour. So Jay White and Dante Martin, I mean, my sound was out during this match, but then it turned out it was not. Martin leaps off the apron, lands a jumping knee, and then there's a Muda lock by Jay White, and Dante rakes the eyes to get out of that. Crowd was just totally dead here, and Excalibur's, these fans are in shock after what they've just seen. And yes, they were in shock for 45 minutes of this 60-minute show. And after a counter to a sleeper suplex, it is followed with the Blade Runner. Dante did get a near fall off the nosedive, but it is Jay White getting the win here. I'll probably repeat this. There was some very good wrestling on Rampage, but until the main event, they could not overcome, like it was not a great crowd throughout most of Dynamite. It had some high points. These, like the pre-Manitoba Massacre, it was silent.
It's just another reminder that like just good wrestling is usually not enough for most people. Maybe
and the audience got what they want. Like they got Kenny Omega, and it was a pretty heavy angle that they did. Like you are like taking out the big hero too. Like you are gonna have like a crowd that's a bit down after that when you've got another hour to go afterward, and that's kind of the sacrifice you had to make. You got a great angle out of things, but you did pretty much kill this crowd for the remainder.
And you're talking about something that really feels like it belongs on the prelims here, with the setup for a trios championship match that I don't is really just kind of in the starting blocks of a interest building. So at this point, even like the Rampage branding, I feel is is more of a like a message to the audience that, hey, like this is not going to be as important as what you guys just sat through, but sit through it anyway.
Which could be the new title of the show.
Yes.
He helps Dante up, but it's all a ploy to hit him with the Bloody Sunday, and then Darius and Action Andretti run down. Arcady Ora, who is one of their new interviewers, is with Deonna Purrazzo, who explains that she's been doing this for 12 years. She's not some random girl. She's a 5-time champion, and if Thunder Rosa wants to make this personal, they can. And do you know what it means to make it personal with a Jersey girl? I hope you never find out. So, dude, the legacy of WrestleMania weekend is not going to be Cody Rhodes or your new era. It's going to be Deonna Purrazzo linking up with the full-blooded Italians, and this has really informed her heel character moving forward in AEW.
I'm really glad, I think
She was really into it at that Hitchcock Memorial show. Like, she was
Exactly.
doing all the mannerisms, and it seems like it probably was just total coincidence. She was paired with them, and
Yeah,
thinks
she
this
looked like she
works.
was having so much fun at that Hitchcock show, and clearly, like everybody, when you're on like AEW TV, you need some form of evolution, and it would be even better if you had some form of hand gesture. And doing the chin flick from the FBI is really the perfect thing, I think, to give her right now for this heel incarnation. After challenging for a championship, and I think doing about as much as you can with Tony Storm as champion. What's the next stage but to turn heel and evolve your character and to show a bit of edge? And she's been doing, I think, a really good job of that.
Coming out of that Mark Hitchcock Memorial show, is Wei Ting's favorite wrestler on that show going to make an appearance on AEW programming this year? Yes or no on Tommy Rich?
As a manager of sorts, maybe for
Just
for
an
Deonna
appearance.
Purrazzo?
An appearance.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
Okay.
Bring the whole FBI.
Okay. I think they're going to be at the Albany tapings this week for TNA. So
Okay.
they're getting a booking. There was a Roosh vignette about his family becoming ROH champion, and he is the most hated man in Mexico. You will put respect on his name. He was back on Collision, so a vignette to keep him. He's got no one else around him, though. He was all alone here.
Yeah, what happened to the rest of the LFI?
Well, Jose's gone, and the rest are all, I guess, in transition of
Where
some
Vance
sort.
introduced to go.
It's just, I don't know, just drinking by himself.
So, I mean, these are like really well produced, and Roosh comes off great in them. But I can't feel like I've seen this like three different like periods of like his AEW career. It almost feels like they're constantly like every few months trying to reintroduce us to who Roosh is. Like don't you remember like when Dralisco and Vance like killed all those guys to lead up to meeting Roosh?
Innocent bodies. It didn't even help heat them up for a big run.
I guess so. All right.
So, I mean, at least when WWE or NXT, they're getting a whole program for the family out of Drew Gulak's demise. Renee is with Big Bill, and he notes that he has all the tools to make it to the top. He just needs the proper guidance. Jericho will get him there. And Jericho walks in. His chest just looked insane here. Notes how the cheers get louder and louder each week. And he welcomes Big Bill into the Jericho vortex as part of the learning tree. And Jericho just, with the most insincere grin into the face. I mean, he's doing just the total smarmy babyface routine here.
He called Big Bill the Big Redwood.
The big redwood on the learning tree.
Yeah, which will be interesting. It's so bad that I mean it kind of fits in with this entire character.
Isn't it funny? He's going to be the big redwood, and WWE has just signed the former Eric Redbeard.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of credit for Jericho for constantly trying to find ways to evolve, and lately, maybe more than lately, they haven't always hit. But I like this over the top babyface act. I mean, I think it's fun and it's fresh. And
You can't say this guy is not aware of of all the people. Jericho is going to be the most observant of all the criticism and crafting it to work in some way, shape, or form. And I wouldn't say this character to me is a giant winner. But I think people can see what is being attempted now, and it's at least
is it enough to turn around the sentiment that people have had about Jericho? And again, this is like whatever, like all the Kylie Ray stuff aside, I don't even know what the conclusion you could make regarding that is. I'm talking about the general apathy, or even like the go away heat that Chris Jericho has been garnering for a significant portion of the audience. Has the change in character been enough to get people to not feel that way anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to play itself out. I would say that last week and this week, it felt like a more kind of focused direction that people could see what the purpose of this was, and that at least they're leaning into it rather than trying to run away from the reactions. Mm-hmm. Swerve is seen icing himself in the back, and he's going to have a word with Christian Cage next week. We're getting an old time face-to-face, and he's not showing up alone.
I wonder who it'll be. Maybe it'll be Rick Ross
Oh man, dude.
showing up in Canada.
Literally was the first thought I had. Would Rick Ross come up to Edmonton?
Yeah, I don't
Face
know.
to face.
I don't know if he's catching much.
If
response
we
to
got
the-
Christian Cage and Rick Ross going back and forth, then I greatly exceed my pay-per-view buy estimation for Double or Nothing.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I think he's free.
The hardest spot on this whole show went to Kyle O'Reilly and Rocky Romero, who I am sure I know that this was a very good match that they had, but I could not believe the lack of sound for this match. And what just was the icing on the cake was coming back from Picture in Picture and Menard, I'm loving these 3-hour blocks. And Tony's like, yeah, me too.
Of course he's loving it. He gets to be on TV, I guess, to a bigger audience. Sure.
Kyle hit a bunch of strikes, and then they had this battle for a Kimura with Romero countering, and then O'Reilly rolls to a knee bar. Romero cradles him for a 2 count to get out, and then it's Romero going for the Kimura and gets caught with a roll-up as O'Reilly manages the win. And Kyle is victorious. And I think they're going to do this Copeland match, and I think it's going to be rushed by your standards way.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, again, I hope that it's more of a build up to a bigger program between the two, just so that Kyle can get some form of character development beyond just, hey, I'm a guy who can wrestle, like, really interesting technical matches. Like, he doesn't need that right now. I think he's proven that enough. He needs actual storyline, actual character building. But this was a good technical match, strong wrestling. Crowd reactions, unfortunately, very low.
Well, we got the haircut, so maybe this is just step
That's
one.
the beginning, I guess, yeah.
We're backstage with Saraya and Harley Cameron. They demanded to speak, and they just bury Mariah May for losing. Harley calls her Tiny Storm. And Saraya brings up that back when she was champion, she beat Toni Storm. And Harley Cameron challenges Mariah May for Dynamite next week.
Yeah, making her Dynamite in-ring debut, Harley Cameron.
Yes. Now, do you believe, Way, that this, that unlike Ospreay or Monet, that these two did come up to Winnipeg for this segment?
I guess it's questionable, like,
I think it's likely.
you think they came all the way up here just to do this?
I don't know.
Where else would they have been, though? Because I don't even recall seeing either of them too frequently, unless I probably missed some Rampages where they might have been on.
Well, they're, I mean, they did Rampage on Saturday this past week. I'm just saying, if they had known in advance, this would be a very easy 30 seconds to do.
Yes, it would have. Yeah. Well, but think about all the people that might have shown up that aren't on TV at all.
Oh, I'm sure there's a healthy amount every week. That on both sides. That that's just part of it. So during Dynamite, they plugged that Konosuke Takeshita would be in action with London Lightning. And this is when I texted you and was like, oh my God, how long is this overrun going to be? Because when I texted that, I was like, we still have 2 matches to go. And it was like coming up on 10:50. So I cannot recall a time that AEW has cut a match, which again, they can now blame on the Bucks cutting this match and not Tony Khan. Tony Khan can say, I've never cut a match.
Maybe that's the secret weapon. London Lightning.
Are they going to start advertising matches that they don't deliver?
Oh, wow.
Could they do that as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, this match just got cut. I can't say there were complaints about it, but yeah, it's just notable because like this, I cannot ever recall them
I know
cutting a
Tony
match.
will listen to like online anything, and so I have a feeling they will rebook this match.
I hope that there are like 100 London Lightning fans that demand, and this gets onto Dynamite next week or something.
Yeah.
So we go to Willow Nightingale and Sky Blue, the Manitoba Massacre for the TBS title, and they start
just a bit of a segment here with the Kingdom and Roderick Strong. Talking about Will Ospreay.
Sorry, yes. We go and Taven is upset because Next Strong has been trending all week because of Tony Khan, and that's their term. And the person who is truly Next Strong is Roderick Strong. Yes, this is the verbiage. Strong says, Will, you've retired the Tiger Driver. Well, you better resurrect it because you're going to need every bullet in your chamber. We decide where AEW goes next, and Ospreay will fall at Double or Nothing. And Mike Bennett just kind of chilled in the back.
Unfortunately, I would say this was a pretty mid promo from all of these guys. And especially now without Adam Cole being around, their relevance has just fallen off so much, this Undisputed Kingdom.
Well, where was Adam Cole? The man rised from the dead from his wheelchair. Like, why do that spot if he's not ready to be on television?
I guess just to give you like a brief update about where his recovery is at.
He can walk.
Yeah, but they still want him to not walk all the time in order to let it heal that much more.
Maybe save it then. When we're ready to use him, we do the rise up from the wheelchair spot.
Yeah, he's kind of busy doing the video game podcast, I guess.
Okay. Is he sitting for the podcast?
I would think so, yeah.
Willow Nightingale and Sky Blue, they start fighting in the crowd. Shivani has observed that Sky Blue, since coming under the wing of Julia Hart, has become a little bitch. Willow misses a cannonball off the apron and crashes through a chair that is set up. And somehow in all of this, Sky Blue gets cut. I mean, this woman has a remarkable ability to bleed. Like, she is not quite at Moxley levels, but I can't, like most Sky Blue matches that I recall, there is blood of some sort coming.
Huh. Sky Red.
Sky Red, yes. Which I don't think is even a joke we're making for the first time. I think that's been used before.
Sorry.
So Blue avoids a cannonball by throwing a chair at Willow, and then she gets the thumbtack spot, not Puck's. And Willow gets seated on the buckle, gets a chair whipped at her, and then Willow lifts and dumps Sky Blue with a fisherman buster off the turnbuckle onto the tacks for a 2 count. So then Sky Blue makes her way to the floor and pulls out a barbed wire board. And I'm just going to say she spent a lot of work for a match that she did not even know she was getting until she issued this challenge about 90 minutes ago. I mean, this all could have been designed and been for naught that she had planted throughout the day.
Well, do we not know that, like, Manitoba just happens to have barbed wire boards readily available?
Yeah, there's a big refrigerator in the back that reads Manitoba Massacre weapons that they have in case for a Jets exhibition game or for a Sky Blue Willow Nightingale match on short notice. Mm-hmm. So the barbed wire board is placed on top of a table. They manage to fight onto the edge, and Willow lifts her for the Babe with the power bomb through the barbed wire board. And man, did they just crash through this thing, and Willow pins her, getting the victory. All credit to these two, because man, this audience, they started at 0 and got them up to react to most of the big spots, but especially for the peak at the end of this. And this was following a long, it was like, this was a crowd that was like, it was tough the entire night, really. Like, they had their up for the Omega spot, but it was a tough crowd in general. And this match, like, they did get into the weapons, and this worked to at least get a reaction for your last match of the night.
You're starting off already with, I think, almost like a, negative sort of like pulse from this crowd, and to like give you like what felt like a very standard Rampage level card in terms of star power too, was going to be a big challenge for anybody featured in this third hour. But man, did these two like come and did they deliver? I couldn't believe some of the spots that they were doing. I mean, you were talking earlier about like AEW making a name for there's their parking lot brawls. They've also really made a name for their women's hardcore matches
in Canada.
Was the Thunder Rosa Britt Baker?
Well, I'm saying they did the tag match in Toronto 2 months ago that we were at too. That was the end of the third hour.
Right. Yeah. But like the women's hardcore matches in AEW have always like been held to a very high standard in terms of just like what they're willing to do. And these two did way more than I expected. They actually did thumbtacks here, and this final, well, the fisherman buster onto the tacks was insane, but then this final like Babe with the powerbomb off the apron through this barbed wire board was crazy, and it's one thing to do the spots, but it's another to just like look at the commitment of the performers, and there was zero hesitation, like no nervousness, like they just went for it, and just a ton of respect. This was the type of match that I thought was so good you almost wish they could have saved it for like a bigger stage, like a pay-per-view, or at the very least like a Dynamite main event. But they definitely achieved, I think, the spot on the card.
Yeah, I really thought the crowd was a negative for a lot of this, because if you look at the lineup, these were like 3 quality matches you got on Rampage, but I think it does tell you as well, just number one, they're running a lot of these big buildings. And this, I think it was a double whammy. It was a big building, and even if this hadn't been, I don't think this was the most engaged crowd to begin with. So you had 2 things working against you. But yeah, it was a big negative on this show, the audience. But the positive was they really got into this last match, and they were super into Kenny Omega, and I thought that angle was great. So I mean,
I thought Dynamite was a good show. I would go as far as to say, you know, if you again don't expect that much from the audience, but as far as like the way that they handled the fallout from the Tony Khan attack last week, to just like the general feeling you get of the Elite now being a very big deal in the entire sort of landscape of this company, I thought they did a really good job.
For next week's Dynamite, so there's no Collision this Saturday, so they're not back until next Wednesday. The Edmonton show, they've announced Adam Copeland and Brody King for the TNT title. Orange Cassidy and Trent Beretta, they're doing that next week. Harley Cameron against Mariah May, a face-to-face involving Swerve and Christian Cage, and Serena Deeb will speak on the show. So probably, well, there will be more matches to be announced. They have 3 announced so far. But there you go, because they're in their Canadian swing. It's Edmonton and then Vancouver on the Saturday afterward, which they announced tonight would be a 3-hour block on May the 11th.
All right, cool.
Okay, let's go to Super Chats and feedback.
Yeah, let's go to some of your feedback here from forum.prowrestling.com. Would you like to start off, John?
Jomo writes, I adored those first 15 minutes. The Elite opening video is the kind of Bucks humor I've come to love, and Christian smugly being the #1 contender and subverting us with the mic shot, only for him to explain their feud like a Bond villain, was superb. Kenny and Okada staring down worked on me. Can't wait. Ta-ta.
Jordan from the Bronx, I really enjoyed this episode with solid builds to the pay-per-view and a power struggle storyline that seems to be borrowing a bit from Succession. Did Succession have
maybe they stole Tony's Class A shares on top of it?
Oh, okay. I guess
a hostile takeover.
I guess what would Tony be? I guess the dad.
Maybe Jack Perry's going to tell Tony Khan in his neck brace, "You're not a serious person."
Oh, interesting. TK has been temporarily compromised, and the EVPs are battling for their share of power. Kenny's return as a White Knight to oppose the evil Jacksons can lead to some fun matchups in the next few months. Whenever Kenny and the Bucks are on opposing sides, they usually make magic in the ring. I'm really excited to see how deep the feud between Swerve and Christian goes. I actually forgot that Christian tagged with Swerve in Wembley. It also reminded me that we have not seen AR Fox since then either. Both Cage and Swerve have gone on to do despicable things separately. I can't wait to see what crimes they commit against each other in the coming weeks.
All right. Yeah, AR Fox has... I mean, I think he did like 1 match after All In. I mean, he's been doing Ring of Honor, so he's just kind of existing there. But I don't know if we will see him. I'm just looking at his last AEW match was November, and he's done 4 matches on ROH since then. But the most recent one was just a week ago.
Brian, I think in the chat suggested Keith Lee perhaps being Swerve's backup next week.
Yeah, if he's able, yeah, he's someone you could have. There's a storyline reason for it. We continue on here, and let's go to Andrew from Cape Breton. So I get that this is a me issue, and I'm one of the few people that may care about this, but I wish the rankings still had value. I was a huge defender of them when they had them the first time and loved that they came back. It can be used as a great world building tool, and AEW did a good job with the concept in the past. As much as I like the idea of the match between Christian and Swerve, I hate that this and the recent title defense against Claudio have killed the concept again. Maybe the Bucks can say...
I don't know if the Claudio match was it a title defense?
It was, yes.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yeah, he did. It was an open challenge. So, I mean, they did kind of skirt around that with that explanation. Maybe the Bucks can say he has to earn his title match and then he beats 5 jobbers in a row on the same night or something. They are still trying to push it with the match tonight between Serena Deeb and Mariah May, but I hate that it seems to be gone by the wayside already. Other than that, tonight was a good show. I'm glad Omega is back and I'm optimistic about his future, considering he did some in-ring activity today. The 3-hour issue was there though. I liked the main event with Sky and Willow, but the middle of Rampage felt like a bit of a slog. Overall, good show tonight.
I just think like if you're going to be telling storylines where the owner gets attacked and there's a corporate takeover by your heels, you might as well just not do the rankings. Like, what's the point of the rankings is to create some semblance of like reality and sports like presentation, in your fantasy like professional wrestling world. And when you're getting into storylines like that, I just don't think it fits anymore. So, it could just be temporarily while the Bucks are in charge that like these rankings aren't recognized. But man, beyond this, I continue to ask like if it's just doing more harm than good to have these there. Let's go to Rob, who says, felt like a listless Dynamite Rampage for me. Quiet crowd, somewhat predictable angles, and a slog of a 3-hour block. I hate to say it, but the Learning Tree may have been my favorite performer on the show. If, emphasis on if, Jericho can continue turning things around, where would that rank amongst his other career accomplishments? Even considering recency bias, I would put it up there. You mean just simply turning things around, or like where the Learning Tree ranks as far as his characters go?
Yeah, I think he means turning things around for this character. I don't know. I don't know how
it's hard to quantify. Like,
we're not there yet, so
yeah.
let's see where this
and
is.
And like, what's that in contention with? What else has he had to turn around? I guess in the past.
I mean, he's done a lot of like great things in this company alone, and this is not there at this point.
He says, on a positive note, I think AEW is doing a good job presenting Willow. She's showing a lot more range in her promos, and her dynamic with Statlander remains intriguing. Fun match with Sky Blue too, with some impressive high spots. Honestly, the lack of noise from the audience really influenced my opinion on this week's show. Hoping next week goes better.
Steve Grows Weed. Christian is a great first opponent for Swerve, especially when it's only a few week build. Good to see Buddy Matthews in a longer TV match. All this Tony Khan versus the Elite stuff is horrible. The cold open was embarrassing to watch. Seeing Tony all weekend being laughed at on various sports stations was a bad look. Do you think that Tony just wants to be on TV, or is he really that petty with all of this CM Punk crap that he can't help himself? If anything, I think I certainly got the sense from tonight, and granted, we don't know where this will be in a month or two, but like it feels as though this is going to be a prolonged run of the Bucks in control, that Tony will be removed from television. Yeah. Now, it certainly does set, at the very least, you do have to have Tony at some point make a return. And I think if he becomes a character, I think you will get a lot of pushback from people at that point. But we're not there yet, so we can only judge what's happening. This is on his point about all the coverage that Tony Khan received, whether it was good or bad. A lot of it is going to be looked upon of how this number does on Wednesday. It's the first week after the angle, and it's the first week after all the coverage that he got on the NFL Network and the Harvey Weinstein, like all this stuff. Does it lead to a number, or is it the same? They came off a really poor number last week. So this is going to be certainly a focused upon number that I'm sure there will be a perfect consensus of what it means and what it describes, and tells people if it was the right move or wrong move over the last week.
Like what number what threshold of a number would give you a definitive answer for any of those questions?
I mean, so the positive is for this number that you don't have the live coast to coast handicap that you had last week.
So it's already going to be bigger, we have to assume.
In theory, they were up against like the Heat and Celtics, which is it's a pretty big series that's going on. That's going to be the biggest thing on cable on Wednesday. But I think the X factor is Omega. Like how much, and I thought throughout the show they did a great job. They constantly were saying Kenny Omega's returning, Kenny Omega. Like they went to every break and we're constantly reminding you. So he's the big, like if this is a healthy number, I think a lot of this you would attribute to Kenny and building the whole show around him.
As well as the angle last week as well.
And the angle, like I think people knew him coming back would probably be tied in with the Elite. It's not like he was just coming back cold. You did have other factors going on. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you would certainly hope that it's above last week. I would say if it was, but last week was under 700,000 viewers and a 0.23. So you'd certainly be shooting for above that. But it's probably going to be a very scrutinized number.
All right, lastly, let's go to Wes from Winnipeg, who just left tonight's Dynamite and Rampage. Excellent show live. Seemed like a pretty packed house. I wonder if it did when you're there. For those that didn't stick around, I highly recommend the Sky Blue Willow Manitoba Massacre that closed the show. Fantastic match that probably should have been on the Dynamite portion. After the camera stopped rolling, Orange Cassidy and Adam Copeland joined Willow in the ring, and Copeland reminisced about the famous tours of Manitoba that he was a part of and thanked the fans.
Okay,
nice.
Well, there you go. You got the full package. I'll say that if they had put the Manitoba Massacre earlier in the show, I don't know what would have closed Rampage, but at least they ended on a high note. I'd rather end on a high note than on something where the audience is completely just has no energy left.
If I had to structure this type of card to have the fans leave home happy, I probably would have done exactly the same thing the way it was laid out, and that's just though a problem of like dividing these shows with the 2 strong hours first and the last hour or at least not as strong. Ideally, you start off with the Rampage and then end with the Dynamite. But we'll see. We'll continue talking about this, I'm sure, in the weeks to come.
We will continue talking. Period. Okay, that's all that we're going to be doing.
And thank you for several people in the chat room. I think we said colonoscopy bag. It's colostomy bag.
Oh, colostomy bag. I actually knew that, but I did say colonoscopy bag.
Thank you. You learned something new.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for the corrections. That's what you're here for. We are going to be back on Friday night with Rewind to SmackDown. So because we are back so quickly with the Backlash show on Saturday, we're not going to do calls on Friday. We'll save calls for Saturday's show after Backlash, but we will go through SmackDown and we will preview the show for Saturday in France. So tune in Friday night, postwrestlingcafe.com, as we will be going through all of that stuff. And you can also catch all of our regular shows. We have a bunch coming out over the next couple of days. Rich Fan and WH Park will be back as the final 3 episodes are going down for X-Men 97. They will have you covered over the next 3 weeks on the cafe.
I think they just finished recording it, so we'll probably drop that episode sometime tomorrow in the afternoon in the Post Wrestling Cafe feed.
Yes. And then WH will be busy because Friday morning he's back. Post Pro Res with Karen Peterson and WH. That'll be out late Thursday night. And then on Saturday, Karen and Bruce Lord have coverage of Wrestling Dontaku on the Post Wrestling Cafe feed. So check out all of that. Late night. Goodbye, everyone. That concludes Rewind to Dynamite.